Today we want to talk about a couple of challenges we had in our last project and how we solved them. This is Michel, who was our architect and developer in this project, and I was the project manager. So the project started when, as any project starts, when the customer was asking about a list of requirements. And when we looked at the list of requirements, we thought most of them are easily solved or can be easily solved with Liferay. So one of these requirements was, for example, to have complex and modular dialogues. So this is something which is Liferay very well prepared for. Another requirement that we saw was that he had a lot of documents that he wanted to store, that he wanted to view and show to his users. So also a feature of Liferay that can be easily used for this purpose. He also wanted to have a full text search, not only on his documents, but also on his data, on all his business data. So this is something which can, when you use the asset framework, you can also add all the data to the full text search and find the data. So another requirement which can be easily solved with Liferay. He also wanted to have everything integrated into his enterprise. Like all his users, he wanted to have his permission groups and so. And yeah, another good use case for Liferay. And another big requirement in this project was to have a very fine-grained permission system, because it's a rather huge set of users that he has, and of course Liferay can do that as well. But there was one requirement that had us scratching our heads, and that was he wanted to keep his business data completely separate from the Liferay data. And that was something we had to think about how to solve this. Because when you usually build complex individual solutions with Liferay, with business data, what happens is you take this blender, you take your business requirements and you mix it with Liferay. You add your service builder entities, use your service builder to build your business objects, and then you get an integrated solution that is completely within Liferay, but you do not have a separation of concerns. You do not have the business data separate, because it's all in the entities built by the service builder. So we thought, yeah, maybe we talk to the customer, because when you find something like that, a good idea is to talk to the customer and get a better understanding, and maybe you can convince him that this solution is a good one for him. Well, we talked to the customer, and we came back with a different picture. And you've seen this picture yesterday. It's actually the picture of the Cassini space probe from Saturn. And it's a picture back, and the dot there, this is Earth. And we came back with the impression that for the customer, Liferay is nothing but a dot he doesn't really want to care about. But his business data, his huge planet, is his data, is his world, and he doesn't want to any interference with any front-end stuff. So let's have a closer look at the actual things. First of all, we're talking about a really huge database with 30 gigabytes of data, with a lot of tables, with a lot of interconnections between those tables, and a lot of columns. This data is growing each day. There's coming in new data every day, around 75 megabytes. So we had also built a lot of import and export jobs. We get data from different external sources, and we put the data out to other third parties. So the data is growing. The customer also wants to have history and audit logs on all the data that has been changed in this database. And he doesn't want to use Liferay standards. He wants to use his own history and auditing. For the front end, he just wants to have the view, so he wants to have all his users to add and view and edit this data. And then another important requirement when you have so much data, of course, you want to do a lot of reporting. And for that, he wants to have the data clean, and he wants to have the data very easily accessible. So he uses BERT for standard reporting, put those created reports into the Liferay database. But he also wants to be able to make some reports using, for example, Excel or his own tools. And he wants to check the data quality. So yes, That's what he needs. So no mixing with Liferay data. So clean data, but also he wants to be able to extend this data easily. For him, this is more a data warehouse approach, and also he has regulatory issues, so he should be able to give this database for investigation, for example. And it's a very complex database, so we had to do a lot of things with regards to performance and, for example, database partitioning. So a lot of requirements that had us scratching our heads, and then we thought, is Liferay maybe not the right option? And then we said, no, it's not as difficult as landing a rocket on a barge in the ocean, so we should be able to do this. And how we did this is, first of all, the standard features of Liferay. We built the portlets using prime faces. For the document management, we of course used the document library. We used the asset framework as described for the search, used the integration and the permission manager of Liferay for the permissions, and how we kept the data separate. We used loose coupling, and how we did this is something that Michel will tell us now.
Yeah. Thank you, Andreas. So also a warm welcome from my side to our talk. What we are going to talk next is we want to look at the challenges we had and how we solved them and how we did actually blend the business requirements and the data while keeping the data separate. So actually, in order to do this, we need to dive a bit deeper into the technical view. So you will see some code lines promised in the agenda, but please stay here. It won't be too deep. So we're also using this conceptual level that you get the key idea of our solutions. So let's have a look at first at the architectural overview. So this is roughly the core application. As you can see it here, we have on the left side a business application, which is the solution for our customer, and on the right side is the business data, which is the business value of our customer. And we have a strict separation between a presentation layer and a service layer, so it's a standard approach. We're heavily using the standard Liferay portlets like DMS and content management, and also the asset publisher, for example, to display latest changes on our objects. And on the other hand, we build a set of custom prime faces portlets, which are actually there to access the business data and to view the business data and to edit this. And to edit the data, we build on the service layer an adapter, which connects these both worlds, the Liferay world and, of course, the business data world. And as stated here, the asset framework, this is a very important feature for us we used in this project. We built the domain objects using the asset frameworks, and we are using as well other Liferay functionalities we will see on the next slides. So here we have a really rough overview over the frameworks and technologies, just as an information for you. But the thing I want to highlight is the design principle. As you can see, it stands above the complete project. And for us, it means, the separation of concerns means that we keep the business data and the application data completely separated. And this was really something that we were scratching our heads, as Andreas said. And we really needed to find a tough solution to manage the key requirements. And I want to show you two examples, how we did it, what were the problems, and what were the finally solutions. So let's start at the beginning with, I think, a common thing that is permissions. What you can see here is a mock-up. This is what you see when you actually log into our application, so it's simplified, but that you get the point. And you can see here our domain objects, and besides we have the Liferay permissions to be used for logging and to restrict the page visibility and something like that. I won't talk about this because this is standard. But actually the requirement here is we have our different domain objects, for example, person, document, company, and stuff like that. And the point is some users are allowed to see these data sets and some are not. So in this concrete example, we have the person and the document object, which is allowed to see, but you're not allowed to see the company. And this is something that goes above Liferay's standard permission system, so we had to find a solution. And if we make a deep dive into one of these business objects in our domain objects, we see this detail page. And as you can see here, we have a set of attributes. And the point is that some of the attributes can be edited by the user and some not. And this depends on his standing in the organization. The customer's organization is distinguished in many departments, where every department has a restricted responsibility on data. And that's the cause why we needed this fine-grained permission system. So in our case, it means this user can edit the postal address and the contact type, but he cannot edit the bank account and the name, for example. So this is very simple. And so we had finally to find a solution how to map these field permissions into finally Liferay. And what we did there is we used a data dictionary approach. And basically this means every of our attributes which we are displaying has a field configuration. And this configuration is saved in the database so that I can change it on runtime. And in these entries, there are many attributes saved concerning render attributes, and there's also saved the information which Liferay role is allowed to edit this. So in the end, it means if there stands role X in this field configuration and the user has this role, he's allowed to edit the field. If he hasn't this role, so he's not allowed. As easy. And on the left upper corner, you see some code. This is our Prime Faces custom component we use to render these objects. And with these custom components, we interpret the field configuration out of the box so that finally we do not have to do anything in the rendering portlet. So everything is done in our custom component. So that's quite a simple and easy solution. So to sum things up, you can see here all the permission layers we had in the project. And the thing that I want to point out, Andreas said at the beginning, we had this requirement of enterprise integration. The customer has all its users and groups and permission managed in a company-wide Active Directory. So we can use this as base for our permission system. We can easily integrate that using the Liferay out-of-the-box functionality and map this to Liferay users and groups, and finally to the roles that we can do the permission checking. And as we've seen, also the famous 20% which need more effort to be solved, we did with our custom permission system based on this data dictionary, but in the end, everything what is done is this role-based access control. That means that we use the Liferay permission checker. So we have an easy approach, an easy solution, and at the end, we are using Liferay standard functionality. And this leads us to our next major requirement, which is search. And of course, you are only allowed to search data which you are allowed to see. And the first thing after we implemented it the way we did, we were searching for something, but we did not get any result. And the problem here is, as you remember, we have this strict separation of concerns, so our business data is kept separate in the business database. But we're heavily using the asset framework, and the index is generated out of the assets. So we have no data to search on. And to better understand what the problem is and what the solution is, I want to make a short recap on the asset framework so that everybody has the same point of view. So basically, the term asset in Liferay means that we have two objects. We have at first the model. So for example, here we have the person, and this model is the business data and contains usually all the attributes. So for example, name, address, mail, and stuff like that. And on the other hand, we have linked to that the asset entry, and Liferay actually uses this for tagging, categorization, linking to each other, permission, and stuff like that. So keep that in mind. And how do we actually generate it? Everybody of you knows it. We use the service builder. We describe our entities in the service XML, and we add all the attributes, and we can add database-related stuff. And then you throw it in your continuous integration, and the service builder just automatically generates the service, the model, and the SQL statements. So you don't have to care about. Liferay takes care of everything. Perfect. And here's, of course, very simplified how actually the indexing process is working so that we, at the end, get finally some results if we search using the default search portlet. The important point is if I save my model using the generated service, with in some ways the indexer class is triggered, and there the relevant method is this doGetDocument method. And there I have my person object, and this method extracts all the attributes and adds them to the index database together with the permission information. So, and you see the problem here. We just have a reference to our real data in the separated database. So all we have here is a reference ID. And actually, this is going to be saved in the index. So what we can do now, we can search by ID 1, and we will get the person. But this is something that the customer does not expect. He wants to search by terms and keywords. Okay, so how do we solve this problem? As you remember, we have this duality in the asset of model and the asset entry, and this is something we can take advantage of, and we use another Liferay feature called the model listener, which you see here. And the model listener allows you to listen on events during the asset entry's lifecycle. So for example, when it's created or when it's updated, you can hook in there and you can execute custom code like seen on the right. So this is actually an excerpt from our implementation. So if we merge these two things together, then we can finally solve the problem. The thing is, when I save my person model, the asset entry, which is linked to the model, because the assets always contains both elements, the asset entry is also saved, and this is the point where I can hook in with my model listener. And as I said, I can execute my custom code, so I can use my service adapter and load the data from the business database concerning this person. And then I get the address, the name, the mail attribute, everything of that. And finally, this is going to be stored in my index database. So if the customer searches now, he will get the results he's expecting. So this is basically how the idea of how we solve this problem in search. And the cool thing is we did not build anything custom. We combined Liferay standard functionalities, used them as modules, and merged them together in one solution. So we kept completely the maintainability. And the other cool thing is we did not mix up the data. The business data stays in the business database and is not somewhere saved in our Liferay, and I get the distinction between those two data sets. So as we've seen, we have two major requirements solved nearly completely using Liferay features. So this is, I think, a very smart solution. So if we sum things up and answer the question, does it blend?
So now what we did now is we took the business requirements and we took the Liferay requirements and we did not mix them, but still we created an integrated solution for the customer. Yeah, so it does blend and does not blend at the same time. Okay, so what are our key takeaways from this? First of all, give your implementations a head start with Liferay. You can use a lot of things from Liferay, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can use them as a starting point for your own implementation and build something bigger on top.
Yeah. The second point is that you do not mix the Liferay and the business data, especially if you have a complex data model. And I had an interesting discussion at the unconference where we exactly had the same problem from another developer, and it stated out this approach is the solution. Because the thing is, you always keep in mind this separation of concerns, because your customer needs and your customer concerns are not necessarily your concerns. So you have really to keep that in mind.
So as we all know, we can build great applications with Liferay, but not only for the user who has a seamless user experience, but also for the architect and use it as a modular and flexible construction kit. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have time for some questions. Anyone have any questions?
Yes, with the search.
Yeah.
You said you were taking the names to the search index.
For example, the name of the person, for example.
The name of the person.
Yeah. So all person-related attributes.
Isn't that mixing your business data, you're kind of replicating the data. You're having that in your index.
Yeah, but we need it in the index to have a search. Yeah,
you need it,
that is correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
But the master data is always in the business. So every time you save or you re-index, the index is updated from the business data from the database. Yeah, you're correct.
I tell you that because I also had that problem at some point, and my customer did not allow
to merge this.
To do that. So
So the important point is that the business data, the leading system is always the business data. This is the important point.
Anyone else have a question? Oh.
So did you replicate the whole schema of your master data in your Liferay?
Good question. No, we did not. We had a set of domain objects which need to be searched. This was just, I think, 10 objects or something like that. But the data model itself was very huge and very complex, and one domain object consisted of at least 20 tables in the end in the business database. So we built only these 10 using the asset framework and the service builder, and we used them to integrate into Liferay, but the business database was much more bigger. Yeah.
Okay, so with those 10 or 20 entities, you covered the whole master data, yes? And you saved only the references to the master data?
Correct, yeah. So there was one master data entry, for example, we have this person example, and we have a person in our business database, but this person has a lot of more tables connected for addresses and mail and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one more is okay.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. Anyone have a question? If not, they have a kind of a bonus part to their presentation.
I think there's one more question.
Here we go.
So to connect the external database source, do you use the service builder to create a kind of connector? I mean, the service builder can generate like the OR mapper. So do you use that for external database as well?
Yeah, we did it ourselves because the ORM, what the service builder generates, was in this case not enough because we had these complex relations between the tables, and as you've seen, we have a lot of data in there. We also needed complex views, which had to be built through our database admin, and this was the cause why we not were using. For the service adapter that we built, we were using our custom implementation and not the service builder.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Michel, for the presentation. I'm happy to announce the winner of our raffle. We have those 3 quadrocopter mini drones, and it was required to use the digital swag bag in the Liferay Events app. And we draw the winners last night with a few beers. And so let me look at the list. It's important to be here in order to redeem it. So the first one, it goes to Austria. It goes to Christian Irasch. I think he's here. So it's equipped with a camera, and you can control it by your smartphone. Have fun with it. You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks. Absolutely. The second one goes to the toy manufacturer Haber. Is somebody here? Let me check the name. Jens Wagner. Okay. And the last one is goes to my hometown in Stuttgart. It's from Robert Bosch GmbH. It's Hans Scholl, if he's here, hopefully. Not. Then we might have another winner, maybe. It goes to the company Nature. I'm not sure if he's here. Korstian Kamp. not here. Okay, no. We have we have a strict order here. And so the last one, but I'm pretty sure that he's here. It goes to Byte to Hannes Tegelow. Congratulations. So, thanks a lot for participation. Then have a good day.
Thank you, and if you have further questions, just come to our booth.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.